Konnichiwa minasan, puchan. Welcome back to Easy Anime Japanese, episode 12, Counting. So we really had a cool idea for a lesson, but to do that lesson, we thought you would need to know your numbers and how to count. So we decided we would make a quick little lesson on how to count to about 1,000, which sounds pretty hard, but it's actually pretty easy. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Japanese counters, which are really hard, but we're going to just touch the basics. So there are a few different counting systems in Japan, but I am going to teach you the most common one, which you'll hear more often in Japan. So first I'm going to teach you how to count to 10. So there'll be the number here, and the kanji that goes with the number here, but you don't really have to worry about the kanji right now. So let's begin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are actually two different ways to say 4 and 7. I taught you yon and nana, but you can also say shi for yon and chichi for nana. So the reason why they have two ways to say 4 and 7 is because shichi and shi sound like the word for death, so they're considered bad luck, like the 13th floor in the hotel for us and 666 for us. So it's kind of a bad luck, so yon and nana kind of came in because they kind of considered it bad luck to say shi or chichi. So now that you know how to count to 10, counting to 11 through 19 is really easy. It's just like saying 10-1 or 10-2 here. So you say 11, 12, 13, 14, all the way up to 19, which is 19. So 20 is 210 or 20, and 30 is 30, and all the way up to 90, which is 90, and it's just pretty simple counting all the way up to 90. So 99 is 99 because it's 9, 10, and also 9, so 99. After 99 comes 100, which is 100. You follow the same rules, so you can go 200, 300, 600, and all the way up to 900, which is 900. One of my favorite numbers to say in Japanese, which is 999, is 999. You follow the same rule with the thousands, which is sen, so it would be nisen, sansen, yonsen, and all the way up to kyusen, which is 9,000. So staying with our tradition of showing anime clips, in this episode of One Piece, Usopp is engaging in a duel, and they're counting down the paces away from each other, so you can hear them count up to 8.
やばいぜ。この俺があの子連れのダディに勝てるわけがねえ。俺はここで死んじまうのか。そんな。なんだ。冒険はまだ始まったばかりだってのに、勇気も男の勲章もまだ何にも手に入れちゃいねえのに。
So that's the basic counting system. And you can now count to well past 1,000, which is really cool that you already can count to well past 1,000, and I've only said a couple things. So now we're going to get into something a little more complex, which is Japanese counters. They can get really complex really fast, but a good way to remember them is like a piece of paper, a pair of pants, a cup of coffee. So it's like that. So in English you wouldn't say, I want 3 papers, or I want 2 pants. You would say, I want 3 pieces of paper, I want 2 pairs of pants. And in Japanese, everything has a counter. And here we have a few counters like a piece of paper or a pair of pants or a cup of coffee and stuff like that. But everything has a counter. There are hundreds of counters in Japanese, but we're going to teach you a few really basic ones. So since we started talking about pieces of paper, I might as well teach you the way to say a piece of paper in Japanese. And you would use mai, which is the counter for flat things. So like a piece of paper or a stamp or tickets to go do something, they all use mai because it's a flat thing. So in this clip from Death Note, L is giving Light 3 notes, and he says kono sanmai, which is translated to these 3 notes, but he's really saying these 3 flat things, which sounds very interesting in English.
The
counter for cylinders like cans or bottles is hon. So if I wanted to say I want 2 bottles of Coke, I would go Coke nihon, and that's how to ask for 2 bottles of Coke. So in this episode of Thier in Resonance, they're telling a riddle like the Sphinx riddle, which is 2 legs, 4 legs, and 3 legs, and they're using hon for legs because legs are like cylinders. So listen for nihon, yonhon, and sanbon.
最初は2本足、次に4本足、最後は3本足なーに。
So you might have noticed that I said sanbon and not sanhon, and that's because in Japanese the pronunciation changed to make it easier to say sometimes, and sometimes I don't even know why. And there are some really complex rules to that, but we're not going to go into them because it's kind of pointless for this episode. You just have to learn to start hearing those things, and if you said sanhon, people would totally know what you're talking about, but it's best to learn those things and start hearing them so you can say sanbon instead of sanhon. So the counter for round things is ko, and it's not just for round things, and it's normally for like small round things, but it can be for other things, like if you don't know what the counter is or if it doesn't have a specific counter, you can still use ko, and so you'll hear ko a lot. And in this episode of One Piece, Nami has split the treasure into 2 bags, and she says Nico, which sounds like Nico D'Angelo, which is pretty funny, but when the bags are stuffed, they're kind of round, so she says Nico. So the last counter we're going to be talking about is one of my favorites, and that is hiki, which is small animals like dogs and cats and hedgehogs, so it's for small animals. So in this clip of One Piece, Kuro is saying those 3 little ants, so we use ariga sanbiki, and yet again it's sanbiki instead of sanhiki. Don't worry about that, you'll start getting used to hearing it and saying it. In this episode of One Piece, Django is saying, what should I do with the other one? And even though he's talking about a person, he says mo'i piki, and he's using the hiki counter, which is small animals, to refer to a person, and he's being really insulting in the way he talks about that person by using the hiki counter. So it's pretty cool that if you didn't know your counters, you wouldn't catch on to that, which is really cool. Now that you know your counters, you can catch on to some wordplay, and it's just really cool to hear stuff that you wouldn't get without knowing these counters and stuff. And there'll be a link in the doobly-doo to a list of all the Japanese counters. You can start playing around and learning those. There's like 100 of those, so it's going to take a while to learn all of them, but you can start kind of playing around and maybe even making up your own mnemonics to remember them in your head. So you can go watch that, you can go read that list, and hopefully you'll start learning more counters. So this gets used a lot in One Piece, both as an insult as counting people with hiki, and there are a lot of monsters in One Piece, and they use hiki for humans because they think they're superior and they look down on humans, and humans to them are small animals, so they use them with hiki. It's always really good to know your numbers, so that's good that you watched this episode, but it's also opened the door to a whole new really cool episode, which I'm not going to tell you what it's about yet, but it's really nice that you know your numbers so we can do that episode, as well as it's just important to know your numbers in Japanese. So I hope you learned a little bit and have fun studying and looking at all of those counters that we have in the description below. Ganbatte! Thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!
It's time to press the subscribe button. Subscribe button. Subscribe button. Subscribe. Bye 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 bye.